Welcome to the Performance Formula with Jody Martins. Kevin, it is so awesome having you on the Performance Formula podcast. Officially welcome.
Jody, thanks for the opportunity to share me with your listeners and viewers.
Yeah, I like how you put that. I'm sharing you with them. That's brilliant. Maybe just by way of introduction, so that everybody that listens in sort of knows who you are, what you do. Give us a quick little rundown of that.
Yeah, so I spent 30 years in the corporate world. Did lots of different things. My background is I had a dual degree in engineering and business. Went off and did my master's in business, and then ultimately did all my doctoral work in organizational leadership and the concept of flow and kind of how do you get in the zone and be there all of the time. So if you're an athlete, you certainly understand kind of being in the zone. And I'll tell you what I found out from all of my research during the podcast. But I spent 30 years in corporate. I had a personal goal to retire at 50, although my wife doesn't call it retirement. And I was fortunate enough to be able to do that. I spent my last 18 years at Intel. Great place, wonderful place to learn, great people, great leaders. I was a project manager, a program manager. I was a general manager for them for a small division. But the last 10 years of my life, I spent managing Intel University and Intel's management leadership development for the world. And we used to do 2,500 managers and leaders in 10 different countries each year. And when I retired from Intel in 2007, we had just finished training our 40,000th manager. So I got pretty good at that.
Yeah.
So my goal was I retired in 2007. I took two of my colleagues with me. We started a company called Magna Leadership Solutions. We'll celebrate 18 years in June. Every year has been better than the last. And my goal was really to kind of give back, to work with small to medium-sized companies that didn't have $10 million budgets, to really help them develop their leaders. And we've been able to do that. So, and in addition to that, I've been a professor at 6 universities. So that between the consulting firm and doing executive coaching and the teaching, I stay pretty busy. But the nice thing is I get to do what I love to do, and I believe everybody can do that. And if everybody who's listening pays a little bit of attention, I'll show you how I was able to do that and how I've been able to replicate that for dozens, if not hundreds of people.
Yeah, brilliant. And I feel like we're very fortunate to have you here. So I'm looking forward to this conversation. So, Dr. Kevin, if there was such a thing as a formula for performance with all your knowledge, and it sounds like there's plenty of it, right? And all your understanding of what is involved with that, right? What do you think we should consider in such a formula, that is important in order for people to be at their best, to go out there and be able to perform?
I think the first thing is I found that the people that perform the best and are probably the happiest and most satisfied are the people that are continuous learners, that it's not just about getting degrees or experience. It's really about considering yourself as a product and building yourself. In order to do that, there's, hundreds, if not thousands of different ways that you can do that. And kind of one of the things that we teach and I teach and I do when I'm coaching in particular is, find the thing or things that you love to do. And then, it's kind of cliche, I guess, and do those. The challenge is a lot of the stuff that we love to do doesn't pay the bills, right? So people that want to be successful need to be able to figure out, so how do those things meet? Where there's usually if you draw a Venn diagram, there's usually some kind of intersection of, for example, if you're a musician, right, that, I'm a drummer. I love music, but I had to make a decision. And, when I graduated high school, do I go to engineering school or do I go to music school? And as you can see, I decided to go to engineering school. A lot of my friends chose the other path, and it was a little bit more difficult for them. But what they did was they recognized I want to do what I love to do, And then there's ways to get paid, and whether it's being a band director or it's opening a music store, whether it's going on tour with, getting with famous people, that you can do that. Writing books, doing clinics, lots and lots of different ways. Bringing your expertise, even into kind of a laboratory where you're testing music and so forth. But you can get very, very creative and find a thing that you love to things that you love to do, and kind of figure out how do you embed those in a way that it really takes money off the table, right? If you stop worrying about money, you can stay very, very focused on what you love to do. But in order to do that, Jody, is you have to be able to get in the zone, or get in this concept of flow, and if anybody hasn't read the book Flow, that's the first thing I'm going to recommend. It's my top 5 books to read of all time. And it's written by a gentleman by the name of Dr. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. Don't ask me to spell that. And he was the University of Chicago's department chair of the Department of Psychology. He found out this concept back in the late 80s, early 90s. In the early 90s, they took the concept and retermed it as kind of being in the zone, which most people are familiar with. And what Dr. Mihai had done was he found out that there is this zone when you have the right challenge, the right level of challenge, and you have the right level of skill. And when you have the right level of skill and challenge, you get in this flow. And the interesting thing that happens is that when you're in there, the biggest way to tell whether you're in flow is when the element of time is severely distorted. You look up at the clock, whether you're out on the ski slopes skiing and you think it's 12 o'clock and it's actually 3 o'clock, you've been in flow. And the same thing can happen in the workplace. And in order to do that, you have to be able to structure your day in such a way that you're getting those elements. There's going to be stuff that you have to do, and then there's going to be stuff that you need to do and want to do, right? So the key is you want to have a mixture. And what I did when I was working on my doctoral research, over 20 years ago, is I wanted to figure out a formula. So being kind of the engineer, I figured there's got to be a formula for this. So what I determined was, or found out, my hypothesis is that each one of us has a different mixture of tasks that we like to do, right? There's a book that was written by a gentleman by the name of Bill Daniels, called Breakthrough Performance. And Bill talks about there's 3 types of tasks we all do. There are routine tasks, there are troubleshooting tasks, and there's project tasks. And routine tasks are highly predictable, right? And they have to be done. They're highly predictable, and they have low delay tolerance, meaning you have to be able to kind of do them when it pops up, right? Like if you're running a production line, particularly if you're manufacturing. And then if you have troubleshooting task is they're not low, they have a low degree of predictability, but they have a high sense of urgency, right? So you have to do them instantaneously. And then project work is high predictability and also low sense of urgency. It's like when you're doing your taxes or whatever, that you have time to be able to do that. And what I found is that there are 3 different, if you use these 3 elements, that each one of us, there's 496 discrete mixtures of those 3. And if you can determine your ideal mixture, what we can do is we can raise your level of, I did this statistically, so I did it with a quantitative analysis. You can raise your level of job satisfaction, motivation, and engagement, and actually empowerment, where you feel like you're under control. And at the end of the session, for those that stay on, I'm going to give you a link to the assessment for free, right? So normally it's a paid assessment, but for the listeners, we'll give it away. Awesome. So if you can structure your day in such a way that you get a little bit of those, and throughout the day, and it's a mixture, and I'll talk about cadence, right? So the important thing is you get up in the morning, particularly let's talk about office kind of workers, and you jump into doing email or whatever. So email, hi, right? It's going to be there, so you have to do it instantaneously. So there's a sense of urgency to kind of get through that. So that's your routine task, and then of course things pop up during the day, and then you should have some project work. And what most people try to do, I know, like when I was in college, I used to lock myself in the dorm room on Friday and try to write that report or do that analysis and just focus on kind of that project work. And usually after about 2 hours, I was up getting something to drink or something to eat or wanted to make a phone call. But the challenge is to pay attention to what I call your cadence, right? That you only have a certain amount of focus time. And I'll give you an example for me. So I can do probably about 30 minutes or so of routine work before I start thinking about all the other stuff that's going on. Troubleshooting into solving real problems typically run an hour to an hour and 15 minutes. All right. Now, sometimes you're really deep into it. You're really in the zone and you're solving it. It might go several hours. That's okay. But on the routine, the normal kind of problems, the computer's not working or software, I got to reboot and so forth. Those kind of things I can last for about an hour and 15. And then project work is about 2 hours. So when I schedule my day, so rather than doing Friday as the project and Thursday is doing all the problems, stuff that's broken this week, and then Wednesday is the email day. What I try to do is once I know my mixture, for me, ideally, I get 50% project work, about 30% problem solving, and about 20% routine work. So I try to schedule my day. I know Monday morning is when most of the stuff hits the fan. So I block that out as a troubleshooting piece, right? And if the troubles and the problems don't come in, I have stuff in the queue that I know stuff that has to get fixed. So I can fill that. And then I create this cadence. So at the end of the day, I get the mixture that I want as close as possible. And what you'll find is at the end of the day, you will be, highly satisfied, highly engaged. You might be exhausted. The difference is you'll want to come back and do it again. And what I found is by having that feedback system for yourself, right? That you're getting this feedback, you're accomplishing all of these things in different modules. That is really quite rewarding. And once you build that habit, it just becomes natural. And doing the blocking, which I used to do when I was younger, where you have each day for a different thing, you won't want to go back to that.
So it sounds like, and I might have this wrong, and feel free to add in. It sounds like you're saying and suggesting that in order to get into flow, it's about how we engage. And I'm going to put some of my own words in here, right? It's about how we engage with our daily tasks and the things that we engage with on a daily basis that will determine how successful we are at that.
Yes, to a degree. I mean, if you read the book, there's 8 different elements that that kind of identify flow. But the key is in order to get into flow, you have to set yourself up, like you're saying, is you have to set yourself up in a way that you're staying continually engaged and motivated. Now, doing the blocking doesn't guarantee that you're going to get into flow 100% of the time. What it does guarantee is you're going to be happier, more successful, feel empowered, be engaged, and so forth. And when those elements start to happen on a regular basis, then you can get into flow. And then the other thing that was really interesting about flow when I was doing the work, and I was fortunate enough to have Dr. Mihai on my doctoral committee, and he helped me develop the assessment that I'm going to give away. So I felt very, very honored that he would do that. I think one of the things that I learned was that flow doesn't guarantee. Typically, you're going to be more productive when you're kind of in the zone. But what flow really does, what they found out that what really happens massively is that's where the creativity happens. Like when you're in the zone, you're not, time isn't a factor. If you're a musician, if you're an artist, if you're a business person, that really being part of really feeling like you're part of the activity as opposed to working on the activity, that it's really you, that all of this creativity just kind of explodes.
Mm. Yeah. And I like in terms of my own understanding, right? I understand all of that. But you mentioned a little bit earlier and hey, well done on pronouncing this guy's name, right? Because normally when I speak about this book, I say I think it's Mihaly and then it's Chia something, but I'm not even going to attempt that surname, right?
Yeah.
So well done on at least giving it a good effort, because if you see it on a piece of paper, it looks complicated.
It does not look like the way that he pronounces it. So it's me. It's what is it? For me, hi.
Yeah,
Chit, send me, sang me hi. So go, that's six
yeah,
different syllables. Yeah.
yeah. And so if you see it on a piece of paper, it doesn't look like that sounds. So, um, but so that model references challenge versus skill.
Yes.
Okay, and so
Mm-hmm.
so where I come from, a question I've always had about it is, skill to me is easy to understand. It's something that you either have or don't have, right? Challenge is easy to understand. It's either easy or difficult. But there are things that are at play that's not in that model. As an example, challenge. So my question really is: does my perception of the challenge play a part versus the actual challenge based on the level of my skill? Like
Uh,
if I'm a beginner in a sport, well, then everything might be challenging. Like if you put me in a competitive environment, everything might be a challenge, and everything might be too much of a challenge, and so therefore I cannot access flow. But I could be a beginner and then have a perception about that challenge, and then, or this is sort of my question: can it work like that? Does it work like this? That my perception of hey, I'm going into a game, and one person could be having the perception like this is the worst thing that's going to happen, and so now this challenge gets made bigger. Another person goes, oh geez, I get to play a game, this could be super fun, let me go see, right? And so then speaks to your curiosity. And so because of that, even though my skill is not that high, I can then, according to this model, or if I understand it, I can step into flow, even though the challenge might still be ginormous, but I am just perceiving it in a different way.
yeah. So great question. It's a question that comes up all of the time. The first thing is, the good news is that at any skill level, you have the ability to get into flow. So you don't have to have a certain degree of skill. You can have zero skill. As long as the challenge is low enough, you're going to have that capability to be able to get into flow. What happens though is that and perception is a big part of it. So if you perceive it as impossible, right? Like, if you were a skier that, putting you on the Olympic slopes or whatever, and have you never skied before, there's a really low percentage chance that you're going to perceive that as achievable, right? So it has to be achievable. And what happens is if the challenge is too high, it puts you in this state of anxiety. And what we know from being in anxiety is you stop focusing on the event and you start focusing on the impact to you, right? If it's jumping off a ski slope or whatever, it might be a physical impact as well as a mental impact. So the perception is, I think key to be able to kind of get it into flow. And then the other thing that's important, which I think a lot of people don't understand, and when I teach classes on this in particular, I ask them, one of the trick questions I ask the students is, if you had to be somewhere on the flow diagram, if I did, a challenge and skill, challenge on the y-axis and x on the and skill on the x-axis, if you drew a channel right in between, kind of where those two meet, that's kind of the flow channel. And I asked everybody, so in an ideal world, if you were a manager and you had to create an environment for your employees, where would you want them to be? And 90% of people say in flow, and that's not the correct answer. Where you want them to be is you want them to be just a little bit in the anxiety mode, right? Because what will happen is if you push them into anxiety just a little bit, what they'll do is it'll give them the incentive to develop the skill, and then they'll come back in the channel. And then once you realize that they're real comfortable in the channel, you want to push them again. And you kind of get this stair step scenario. Olympic athletes operate in the upper corner, novices operate in the lower corner. And if you have a good coach, whether it's in sports or in business, professional or personal development, you have to push them just enough so that they can, if you push them too much, then it seems impossible and people give up or they become dejected, right? If you can push them just enough and they can develop that skill personally or with a coach working with someone, then they can achieve that. And you want them to get into the flow. You want them to be in the flow enough so that they feel that sense of satisfaction and engagement. But the thing is if you stay too long in the flow, what happens is eventually it moves into the lower quadrant where you have high skill and lower challenge, and you get into what Mihai talks about as you get into boredom, right? That you get into boredom where the challenge isn't there. And for me, if you're talking business perspective, the best managers really pay attention to this. And when I tell them is when you have people that everything is just clicking all of the time, right? That it's just super, super smooth. That's where you need to give them some stretch goals or stretch opportunities, right? Because ultimately, if it goes unattended, although it feels fantastic at the moment, eventually it's going to slowly creep into the boredom area. And then once you're in there, getting back into flow is a little bit more challenging.
Mm. Yeah, I'm actually thinking about how this all applies potentially to athletes, and
Mm-hmm.
and like in the athletic environment, I think the idea and concept of flow or being in the zone is understood. However, it's elusive. It's described as elusive. You maybe have it once or twice a year.
Uh-huh.
And it's described maybe as, or not described, but I think because of that, it's not something that's always actively pursued. So there could be a over focus on technical skills or over focus on tactics or things like that, because it's sort of the perception is because this sort of happens sporadically by chance on its own, that therefore, it's no worth spending a lot of time on actually. And I mean, I'm putting words into other people's heads. Yeah, it might not be how they think about it at all, but it's my perception, right? That the environments I've been in and people I've engaged with, that they don't initially consider flow something to like really focus on. It's like, if it happens, it happens. If not, it not. I'll keep working on my skills. And we sort of hope that the challenge figures itself out, right? But what you're suggesting is that, hang on, we can tweak the challenge with our perception. So we can sort of prime ourselves better by activities and mixtures. I love that you speak of it as a mixture, because I often refer to things being like a cocktail, right? That you got to get your cocktail right.
Yeah.
And so I love that. And so you can sort of get better at priming it, not knowing if it's going to happen, but we can work towards setting it up more. And so my question is there a way of measuring this? Because if I can prime it more, and I can sort of know, well, am I in that slightly anxious place, so that I would also imagine from a performance point of view, normally athletes that are slightly anxious at the start of a performance actually perform better than the ones that are too confident, because I feel like it switches on focus. And I think focus is a key ingredient to flow, right? So
Yeah.
So my question is, like, how can an athlete or a person listening, how can they measure this, or how can they set up that they know, okay, hang on, this is where I need to be. This is what it feels like, and how do I get myself there?
Well, great question. And this essentially what I did all my doctoral research on. And here's the really good news is there's 3 dials that you can play with, not only to give you to accomplish the tasks, but also get you closer to the flow. And there's 3 variables that apply to any kind of task that we're doing. The three variables, I'm going to talk about each one of those in a minute, are quantity, quality, and pace, right? So whether you're an athlete, whether you're a business person or whatever, and you're not getting into flow, right? The good news is if you tweak one or more of the variables, the dials, it can pump you up or pull you down, right? If for example, if the activity that your boss is asking you to do is, you have to create. We work a lot with people in finance and banks and so forth. So if you're a loan officer, we'll use that as an example, and then we can do a sports analogy if you'd like. But if you're a loan officer and you normally kind of do, let's work on per day. You do 2 loan applications per day, right? And you're doing this for 5 years, right? You're probably way in the boredom category. So what you need to do is you need to pump up one or more of the dials in order to do that, right? So maybe you go to 3. So that's going to be a little bit more challenging for you with process and dealing with things and doing some automation. And generally, when people get too stuck in doing routine stuff, it usually means they haven't spent the time of creating a good system to help them. So you can pump up the quantity, for the loan application. You can pump up the quality. Quality meaning like instead of getting it back 3 times from the other departments that have to review it for more information, you shoot for 1 error per day instead of the 10 that you're getting at the moment, right? So that's the quality piece, and then the third element, which is pace, and too often people put in time. So like a manager might say, I need you to process these loans by the end of the day, right? 2 loans by the end of the day. By the end of the day doesn't set you up in order to give you a milestone to recognize performance and accomplishment. And you have to be able to have that pace in there. So rather than saying, hey, I'm going to pump you up from 2 to 4, right? Which means you're going to be giving me, I don't want everything rushed at the last minute, right? Because that's troubleshooting, right? What I want you to do is I want you to turn this into some routine or project work, right? And I want 1 loan every 2 hours for the next 8 hours, right? Kind of thing. So I can pump that up. And as you get better at that, maybe it gets to 1 loan every hour or whatever, right? So as long as you can play with, typically when people aren't in flow, what they want to consider is 1 or more of the 3 dials needs to be dialed up or down, and you can dial some up and you can dial some down. Once again, as you so aptly pointed out, it's a perceptual thing, is that you have to believe that it's accomplishable, although it might be just a little bit of stretch because you haven't done it at that quantity, quality, and pace. So real simple. Most people don't do that. And the other thing that I teach in our communications program in our Leading Forward Academy is that when you're setting expectations, whether it's for yourself or for others, having those elements, the quantity, quality, and pace, and usually pace is missing. It's usually time. Hey, I need this report by the end of the month or whatever. I want this project finished in May or whatever that is. And by not setting it up with milestones kind of built in there so people know whether they're making forward progress, you're not setting yourself up for success. So paying attention to the 3 elements, if something's really not working, most of the time you can tweak it. Quite often, depending on if you're working in the corporate world versus being an athlete, you may not be able to have 100% control. I do find is you usually do have influence.
Yeah, brilliant. Do you think there's I mean, I say you, we. If you go on social media, right, and you sort of look around and you see other psychologists, you see other podcasts, you see them say speak about this idea or concept of meditation, mindfulness, breathing practice. To me, all of those sort of practices sort of fit in a similar category, right? And that those could be doorways potentially to flow. what's your take on that? Because the perception could just be, okay, well, if I go sit and I meditate for a bit, well, then I might get into flow a bit better. My sense in this conversation so far is that there might be a little bit more to it than just that, or maybe not. I might have it all wrong.
What you're talking about additional variables in the equation, right? So I've just given you a couple of variables that can move the needle up or down. One of the things I think you're talking about, if you can see this or not, is there's a book called Positive Intelligence, and it's very much along the lines of the stuff that you're talking about. It's mindfulness, it's meditation, it's being able to stay focused, kind of recognizing what Shirzad Chamine, who has written the book, talks about your saboteur brain, the things that are holding you back, and your sage brain, the things that are going to get you forward, move you forward. And in order to get into flow, you have to have your sage brain completely energized. And you can't get your sage brain energized until you recognize what saboteurs are holding you back. Maybe and there's 10 different saboteurs. And I would encourage anyone that's on the site or on listening or watching the podcast, is to you can go to pqtrainingandcoaching.com, and you'll get a quick start guide. You can take the assessments; they're all free, and people can learn that. And once you kind of understand the things that are holding you back, then you can use techniques like mindfulness or meditation, focus, in order to energize your sage brain so that you can get in the zone. But you have a really, really good point there is if I can't be the event that I'm doing, I can't truly be in there, and I'm constantly thinking about the tactics. I mean, if you're my business partner is a big time skier, and he talks about really kind of being in the zone, and it's not about, oh, I need to turn my skis this way, or I need to point this, or if you're focused on the tactics, then you're not in the activity. And the key is to be able to do that. If your saboteurs are turned on, right, particularly if you're a hyperachiever or a stickler or an over hyper rational type of brain, and your brain is continually talking to you in a tactical way, you're not going to get into flow, right? It just can't happen. So that ability to train your brain through meditation, and really what meditation or mindfulness activities are, is it's kind of building. The good news is the brain is plastic, so you can kind of mold it. And if you build that new neural pathway, what happens is when you need it, and you want to get into the zone, you can move over to the neural pathway, and it takes over. The biggest challenge that I've found, Jody, is that in today's world, we work on what I call a Wall Street model or instant gratification model, and our ability to focus long term. There's a good study that was done by Microsoft, and our attention span has gone from like 12 seconds down to 4 seconds or something ridiculous like that. And with all social media, it just kind of reinforces that. So you have to have everything instantaneously. And what you need to do is what mindfulness or meditation activities, yoga, those type of things do, is it's building this neural pathway for you. So when you need it, that you can kind of change lanes and go into the superhighway. The problem is there's not a cause and effect relationship, right? That if I put 2 hours in here, I get 2 hours of advantage of the highway. Well, if I've only built 100 feet of the highway, voila, I'm back into the tactical zone. So you have to build it over time. There's lots of studies, but the good studies say that in order to build a habit, it really is about 61, 62 days of continuous work. Doesn't have to be a ton of time. It has to. The key is consistency, and then you'll get enough roadway so that when you need it, it's there. A lot of people will, there's a commercialized version that says you can do this in 21 days. That could happen. It's very rare that it would happen. It's much more like three times that. But once you build that highway, it's accessible to you, and you can get into flow. The thing is you have to have faith and patience, right? And you have to have that degree of belief. And if you can do that, then you can get, and you can build your skill, and you can, play with the knobs for quantity, quality, and pace. All of those, most of those, or all of those are available to you. And if you can do that, and you do it on a regular basis, and you have the faith, over time, first 30 days, 60 days, you're going to start seeing, oh, that is different. And I think that when I teach the positive intelligence programs, there's a 6-week program that we do for positive intelligence. When I teach that, the thing I ask them, most people, of, is it different? Do you see something different? And the way to tell is, it's not so much, can I light switch stuff off and I can get in the zone and then come out? It's much more of, what's your recovery time? So before, you used to switch over, and then 10 seconds later, you have to go do something on Facebook or Instagram or whatever. Does that happen every 10 seconds now? Maybe it's every 20 seconds, right? And eventually it's a minute, and eventually it goes, when you get to finish the highway, essentially it goes away completely, and you're able to pick the lane that you want to be in, and stay in there. So you will see some degree of progress. We're, particularly Americans, right? We are just impatient. Like, we want everything now. And this concept of the development really is more what I would call correlational than causational. So it's not 2 hours, I get 2 hours of advantage here. It's like, you put 2 hours here, another 2 hours, another 2 hours, or whatever the time is, and eventually you're going to start seeing the advantage, but it's going to happen over time. And there really is there's really good neuroscience that says there is a correlation here.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. That's got my head going in a lot of different directions over here. One of the things that I'm sort of very mindful of by myself is that, and I think maybe before I get into that, I love this analogy of the roadway that you've built, and how wide have you built that? Because I had another guest on my podcast 2 years ago, and this idea has stuck with me for a very long time, and I sort of reference it quite a lot, is that it's our ability to focus on the right thing at the right time, that plays a big part in our ability to perform at our best. So if I need to complete this document, but while I'm trying to complete this document, my mind is busy with all sorts of other things, well, then I am not optimal in completing this document. In the same way, if I'm an athlete and I must watch this ball and hit it, if my mind is busy with other things and I'm not able to sort of focus on just hitting this object, then we're not going to have that ability to be at our best, to be optimal. So one of the things that you describe here is the difference between doing the activity and being in the activity. I hope I'm using the correct words there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Yeah. And you make a distinction there around thinking around tactics and things like that. Could you maybe just expand on that a little bit? Like, what is that thing to be in the thing?
Yeah, right. So when you read flow, Mihai talks about kind of being in the zone where you become the activity, and it's really pretty easy. Like, if you are, say, working on a document, you're a writer or whatever, and you're thinking about the grammar and so forth, and the tactics of executing, getting all of that in, you're not in the zone. If you're thinking about something else, right? This is where the superhighway thing comes into play, where you're thinking about, I got to get this done because at 9 o'clock I have this next podcast that I have to do, and I have to run to that. If you're thinking there, then you're not going to be in the zone. And although we want this to be a light switch, you just can't light switch it. It's going to happen over time. You're going to see, I'm going to get continually better at creating that document. Maybe the first time I've done it, or the first week I work on it, and I'm working on my mindfulness or meditation kind of activities, developing my skills or whatever. Maybe my my concern about, oh, this doesn't sound right, or I need to put some commas in here, or whatever it is, where you're really much more focused on the tactic than kind of being that story that you're writing about. That over time it's going to get longer and longer and longer before your brain jumps in and tries what Shirzad talked about. Your saboteur brain jumps in and says, "Oh, you're never going to be a writer," or "Oh, you're not going to be as good." And if you have this kind of um, this hyper achiever kind of brain, or hyper vigilant brain, as you're always worrying about next. Oh, what after I'm done this, what am I going to do next? Or this isn't going to be good enough for publication. Whatever it is your brain's talking to you that it's made you highly inefficient. And what we want to do is we want to be able to turn that off. But as pretty much as Americans in particular, we want to turn that off instantaneously. And if you haven't done the work, you're not going to get the success. And I think the same thing happens for athletes, right? That if you are as a baseball player, as a soccer player, as a skier, or whatever it is if you're focused on the mechanics, you're never going to achieve what's possible, right? If I'm like, I got to keep my foot here, I got to keep my foot here, got to keep my hands back, right? If you're focused on the mechanics, and it doesn't mean mechanics are not important. The thing is that the focus has to be on the ball. It just has to be on the ball. And the minute that you become that integrated system with the bat and the ball finishing, that's where the flow potential happens. And the nice thing is usually when you're in that zone, you're going to get this gigantic performance boost where you're going to, instead of hitting it, 300 yards, you're going to be able to hit it 400 yards or whatever. And the key is what Mihai talks about is it also will feel effortless. It won't feel, and I'm a golfer. I'm not a great golfer. But one thing I do know is the harder I try to hit it, the worse the ball goes, right? And I'm constantly thinking, keep my feet straight, don't twist, right? And the minute that I'm thinking about all the mechanics that I know from my golf instructor that said, if you do all of these, you'll get an amazing shot. And what I realize is I just have to address the ball. I just have to kind of be the ball, and allow kind of the internal system to be able to take over. Now, at the end, if I've hit the ball badly or whatever, doing an analysis right after of recognizing, I pulled too fast forward this way, or I let my hands come too forward too soon. That's okay. The thing is if you're focusing on where your hands are going to be as you're doing the downswing, there's a good chance that you're not going to have the best shot at all.
Yeah. So in flow, you can only access the level of skill that you've developed, plus a little bit. The reason I say this is not like a beginner athlete will access flow and then be elite.
Yeah, well, there's the skill and there's the flow, right? So an Olympic athlete has this amazing skill, and he or she most likely, if they've gotten to that point, have the ability to turn off all the other stuff. Like if you ever watched anything about Michael Phelps, right? Before he goes to swim, he puts headphones on and he goes into a meditative state because he recognizes, he's doing it for, 20, 30 years or whatever. He recognizing it is that's the most important thing. It's not thinking about how he's going to swim and so forth. It's really getting his brain completely cleared. Now, anybody else that's going to try to compete with an Olympic athlete, if they haven't developed a skill, they can still get into flow, but they're probably going to reach the other side of the pool about 10 minutes later than Michael's going to do that. Doesn't mean that both of them can't be in flow. The difference is, once again, tweaking the three dials, quantity, quality, and pace, right? I have a different quantity, or I have a different pace in particular that I am achieving, every minute or so than what Michael Phelps is doing, right? So the good news is you can get better. And if you really do want to get at the top, 1,000th of a percent of people that are going to do that, You have to be able to have the degree of diligence. You have to be able to do all the skill development. But I think if one of the first books that we were required to read when I did my doctorate was The Inner Game of Tennis, and I thought, man, this is so stupid. Like, what? Like, I'm doing really good academic work. You're going to have me read this book? I mean, that just doesn't make any sense. Now, obviously, if anybody's read that book, or there's other books, you realize all of the most amazing people will tell you that, it's 90%, well, I don't know, 90%, but it's the mental piece is so much a part of it that if you don't pay attention to it, you're never going to be able to achieve that. I don't think most people believe it. It's like, no, you've done, as a golfer, you've hit 4 million balls, and it's like, yeah, and that's a degree to be able to get to the performance level. There's a different degree of whether you're performing it or whether you're being it, right? And I think the best golfers or best athletes in general are kind of, they're just a part. They have the ability to block out everything else. I think one of the best movies to watch is Free Solo, right? If you've watched, anybody's watched that. If you haven't watched that, that's a must watch.
Yeah.
And that's the extreme degree of someone that has the ability to light switch their brain off so that the focus 100% is doing the climbing, and there's 0% thinking about what all the rest of us are like, oh my God, I'm going to die, kind of thing, right? So that to me is probably one of the best examples of flow. And now, do you want to get there? I don't know. I don't want to get there. And also I think you have to have a very different mental anatomy as well. I don't think that this just comes by just doing lots of meditation. I think there's a part of it's nature and nurture.
Yeah, there's a biology side to it too. It's not just And
I think it's a combination. A lot of people think, oh, no, it's just biology. That's just the way that it's like, no, they've taken the biology, which is, I think, the talent piece that has been given to you by God or whoever, and they've developed a skill on top of that, right? And then there's other people that haven't been given the biology that really dedicate their life to developing the skill, right? If you're given the biology and you develop it, your potential of getting higher in the zone is much more achievable.
Yeah. It makes a lot. I've seen that model. Inner Game of Tennis, by the way, great book. It's most probably the one book that I think has influenced my coaching, my technical coaching, in the biggest possible way. I'm not saying I'm doing it like that every day, but it is certainly it is the book that set me on the path where I am having these podcasts and these conversations, because it was so different to what we're basically taught how to coach. And
trust the process, have faith, right? Have faith and trust the process.
Yeah. And then, exactly. And so I think, even just what you described, the model, the challenge and skill model, for me personally, I definitely have more clarity on how to make sense of that. In particular, I've never really thought of like lower skilled people also being able to access flow at their level. I always thought, no, you need a certain level of skill. And if you don't have that level of skill, then you won't get there. And so that puts a different spin on it, because if a beginner athlete comes to me for coaching, whether it's mental or technical or skills based, it means if I can help them access flow a little bit better by being aware of how much I'm challenging them, based on their current level, and we can get them into flow, then they might progress a lot quicker versus if we throw challenges at them that's too difficult, or maybe making it too easy,
Yeah, and I think along the same lines, Jody, is there's only a certain amount of energy you have for persistence, right?
Yeah.
And earlier on, when people are in the lower phases of flow, if or in the lower areas where you have the smaller challenge and the smaller skill, if you are able to get them in the flow and they can feel it, then motivating them to get to the next level is a whole lot easier. And so me as an executive coach I'm not going to coach a chief technology officer, to be this amazing manager where really all of their skills are technical. They're really good on doing design, but they're terrible on the human piece. I'm not going to make them an amazing human person, a human focused individual overnight. I need to be able to get them the small wins, right? Where they're going to go, oh, I want to know a little bit more about that. Okay, go read this book, watch this video, do this prep. Here's an activity you do with the practice. You want to create a safe environment for them to fail. And if you can do that, you know, it's amazing what you can accomplish. And you want them to struggle just enough so they want more, but not too much that they give up. Right. And that's a combination, I think, of an art and a science. Right. And that's really where, like yourself, is the best coaches know how to do that.
Awesome. Dr. Kevin, I've really enjoyed this conversation, and thank you for shining a little bit more of a light into the idea of flow, right? And what that means and what that looks like, and, how we can have more of it. If anybody's interested in sort of connecting with you, what would be the best possible ways for them to do that?
Yeah. So if you probably email is the best. If you send a note to me at my business address, it's Kevin, Kevin, at Magna, Magna leadership, all one word, magnaleadership.com. I'd be delighted to connect with you. I'll give you access to my calendar. And if you want to talk more about flow, or whether you're having a challenge or you're having a challenge with some of your employees about, I just can't get them excited, and you're having high toner or whatever, and you want to have that conversation, I'm delighted to have that conversation. Lots and lots of tools that you can use. We mentioned a couple of them on the podcast here. The thing that I will promise all of you is you will absolutely never get a sales pitch from me. I'm never going to try to sell you, oh, you need to hire me as a coach, or you need to bring this. I will never do that. If I can help you and I can make you better, fantastic. And if you want lots and lots more details and you want to spend time with me, I'd be glad to have that discussion. If the answer is no after the conversation, I have got enough, fantastic. Just go and make the world better, and I'll be a happy guy.
Awesome. You did mention earlier that there's a little free goodie for everybody because of this part. Yeah. So where do they get that?
I've created this link for you. So if you go to Magna Leader, not leadership, magnaleader.com, and a / and all capitals, it has to be all capitals, gift, GIFT. What you'll do is you'll get a link to the paid link, so there will be no cost for you because you've been tolerant of listening to me for this amount of time. Is you'll be able to get access to that link. It'll only take you about 5 minutes to fill out the questions. There's 15 questions, and what it will do is it will instantaneously give you what we call a task quotient report. And the task quotient is it'll identify your ideal task mixture for you. And then if you can structure your day along the lines of what we talked about in here, along that, and I would say is give it a try. Best way is to just try it. Try it for a day or two. Ideally, you can try it for a week and see if it makes any difference. I will guarantee that it will make a massive difference how you feel at the end of the day or the end of the week. Not only what you accomplished, but how you feel about how you accomplished it. So give it a try. And if it doesn't work, call me and we'll tweak it so it does.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I've enjoyed this conversation. And thank you for adding to the conversation here on the performance formula.
Sure. My pleasure.
Awesome. Have a great day.
All right. Bye-bye.